Hey everyone, I hope that you are all doing well. Today I would like to talk to you guys about different types of fencing. Everyone has their preferences on fencing, and we use a lot of different types of fencing here on the farm that I live at. So I was going to talk to you guys about the different types of fencing that I have on my farm. So just the positives and negatives of each type of fence or combination of fence that we use. So I'm going to show you guys around a little bit. The first type of fence that I'm going to be talking to you guys about is this one right here. It is a woven poly rope. So there is electricity that goes all throughout this rope. It has good thickness on it, and you guys can kind of see the wire right there. So it has high visibility, so the horses can easily see it. I have them up with these posts right here. This is really good for horses that are trained with electric fence. Since it is high visibility, the horses have an easy time seeing it. I can leave a lot larger gaps. Obviously, this wouldn't work for smaller animals like sheep or goats. Something like this may work for cattle as well. So this is a low tension, meaning that there isn't much tension. So if this was off and I could move it, so you can kind of see that there is some movement to the fence right there. So that means it is low tension. All electric fences are considered a psychological barrier. So that means that an animal could easily get out of it if they weren't trained for the electricity. So the barrier that is actually there is just psychological. They think that it is stronger and they're scared of the electricity, so they don't touch it. So it is a psychological barrier versus a physical one. So we're gonna move over here. This is a polymer fence. Not many people use this type of fence. It is very expensive. It is also long lasting if you don't have any accidents with it, like trees falling on it. So right here we had a tree fall on this one right here. So you can kind of see the bend. These are meant to move with the horse, so if the horse runs into it, there is some give to it. You don't have to paint these fences, but you do have to power wash them. You can kind of see they look a little bit dirty, but you don't have to paint them year after year like you would a wood fence. So these ones are nice because they do have the capability of running electricity. Some of them have a black strand on top, so that means it is electrified. So some people will do either the top or the bottom. So that is a nice feature. So it is a physical barrier, and it is also has that psychological component to it. And it is nice because if the horse runs into it for any reason, if they're roughhousing or anything, there is a little bit of give. This is supposed to be a high tension fence, even though when the horse hits it, there is a little bit of give. It is supposed to be considered a high tension. There's supposed to be a lot of tension on that fence. We'll move over here. This is to keep more so the wildlife out. This is a 2x4-inch welded wire fence. And I don't particularly like this type of fence for many different reasons. Because it is welded instead of knotted, goats tend to push up against the fence. They're very persistent animals, so when they are with this type of fence, the weld tends to come undone right there where the two meet, and causing breakage into your fence. So I don't think this fence is great for goats. If you want to keep it as kind of like a wildlife exclusion, it works great. The wildlife doesn't really seem to go after or under or around it. So it's great for the wildlife. It works well for the horses. The horses don't really seem to bother with it. So this is a piece of a 2x4 welded fence that we have left over. And you can see kind of here, this is what goats will do to it. Right underneath we have a wooden fence. And we are in the process of replacing a lot of this wooden fence. It does have a long life. These are all pine wood boards that were milled on the property about 20 years ago. So they do have a long life. They do need to be repainted. We are keeping all of the solid ones. So anything that has rot like this needs to be replaced. But anything that doesn't, this one doesn't have, the top one doesn't have much rot at all, I will probably just repaint that and replace, say, like the bottom board or something like this that needs to be replaced. One thing about the wood fences is that sometimes the horses will eat the fence, so I'm going to go show you parts where the horses will chew on the fence, and they might do that if they are bored or if they are waiting for food, something like that. So I'm going to go show you guys where the horses have been eating the wood fence, which is why it might not be the best option. So right here, the horses have been eating the fence, and they kind of just do this slowly over time. So it's not generally a huge issue, but it can be. Next, I'm going to show you another type of fence. So here's an example of another wood fence. This is to our riding ring. These boards are also, most of them are about 20 years old. So these ones are in a lot better shape. They don't have direct contact with the horses too much. So there's a lot less wear and tear on them, but they can last quite a long time, as you see there. Over here we have a 2x4 inch knotted wire fence, and this is a lot more preferable for people with goats. Since it is knotted, the goats cannot easily break the fence. They're pretty persistent on banging their heads into the fence or rubbing up against the fence, roughhousing with it, climbing the fence to try to get brush on the other side. Goats are pretty unforgiving with fences. So right here, this is a fence that I would highly recommend for goats. And since it is a smaller size, it's 2x4 inches, it's a lot harder for them to get their horns stuck in it. Anything like a 4x4 inch, it's easier for the kids to get stuck in and the adults' horns to get stuck in. So this is a really good size for goats. We do this with a combination. On top there is a hot wire, which is electricity. So goats are really good at also jumping out. So this is an example of a combination fence. We use a combination of both the wire fence and the hot wire fence to keep the goats from getting out. We also have a top strand, and then we have a bottom strand, and this is to keep try to keep the goats from jumping out. Hey guys. They want to be in the video. I also have this netting fence, and it is a portable fence, so that means if you want to graze your animals in different locations, it is great to just be able to move them. You can use solar with a solar battery and charger with this type of fence, which is really nice. It can be a pain because every single time you move it, if you want to move it a distance away, you have to roll the whole thing up. It's a little bit easier if you're just moving it piece by piece, like block by block, and kind of just rotating it over versus moving it all together. It's quite a pain to move all throughout the property. It can be quite a headache. Yeah. So this is also considered a psychological fence since it uses electricity. This isn't on right now, so it's quite movable, and if the goats or any other animals are not trained to it, they can easily go through it or around it. So you have to train your animals to be able to use this type of fence. Here we have a 4x4 inch knotted wire fence. This works pretty well with the pony that we have in here. The only thing is that sometimes there is a potential for a horse hoof to get stuck through this fence. So if you have any horses that are particularly naughty or like to run around a lot, this would probably not be the fence for you exactly. They do make safer models where they come in a V shape, so there's no possibility of horses getting their hoof stuck. One thing is, though, that we recently started putting in a 3-year-old pony in here, and he started to push down on the fence. So you can kind of see right there. So in that situation, what we will probably end up doing is putting a hot wire on top. So it will be a psychological barrier. He won't be able to put his neck over the top, because every time he'll do that, he'll end up getting shocked. So sometimes a combination fence is the best way to go, because each animal has different needs. And there are other types of fencing out there, and you just have to see what works best for you and your animals. So right here, we did have that polymer fence. The horses, since this is such a short area from here and it went to that shed right there, since that is such a short area, it was hard to get a good tension on it. So it's a lot easier to get it along long areas. You can see right along the back. It goes for a long while, so we haven't had any problem with that top one in the back. But in such this short area, the horses kept kind of pulling it off and stuff like that. So we replaced it again with a wooden fence. So choosing the right fence the first time is really important, so you don't end up spending a ton of money. There was originally a wood fence here. We replaced it with the polymer fence, and then we had to replace it again with the wood fence. So we had to change this out twice. So I highly recommend that if you are ever purchasing fencing, to do a ton of research and find out what works best for you and your animals. When they rub up against it or climb on it, so there's big holes in it that can become quite dangerous for both human and the livestock. So this is a fence that I really don't recommend for goats or anything that is mischievous.